You may be wondering what just happened there. Well, this is the rarest death message in all of Minecraft, where the player leaves the world border while fighting the Ender Dragon, or in other words, player left the confines of this world whilst fighting Ender Dragon. But how is this possible? You can't be fighting the Ender Dragon and be in the overworld at the same time, making this impossible, right? No. The Minecraft community specializes in finding the weirdest exploits in the game, and by using this insane contraption we can somehow bring the Ender Dragon into the overworld. But you may be wondering, how will I reach the world border? Most people would use an elytra, or some sort of other method of transport like horses with speed potions, but I am not most people, as I have found a glitch that allows me to teleport to the world border in just minutes. As in versions 1.9 to 1.13, there was an exploit where if you jump and throw a pearl while in a nether portal, it will multiply your x and z coordinates by 8. And combined with the fact that we will be on the nether roof, it will multiply our coordinates by 64 times, so the plan will be to use my elytra for a bit, then switch over to the exploit, which will maximize the distance. Now that we have a way to the world border, it was time for bringing the Ender Dragon to the overworld, which will be done using another exploit. You see, an insane Minecrafter by the name of Shulkercraft has found a way to transport the Ender Dragon to the overworld. First step is to pillar up 200 blocks from the portal, then place blocks in all these coordinates. And as the dragon is perching, break the last end crystal, which will for some reason confuse the dragon and cause it to freeze. The next step will be to set up a flying machine to push the Ender Dragon through the end gateway into the outer islands, which will make the game think there isn't already a dragon and spawn another dragon. So if you go back and kill the newly spawned dragon, portal will open like normal, and that causes the frozen Ender Dragon to fly back to push the Ender Dragon through. By then all the hard ways after all those steps the Ender Dragon will finally be in the overworld. And for this challenge, I will be using the same world for my previous challenge, since I already had basic resources on it. But when I loaded onto the world, I found myself getting pummeled by a ghast and nearly died because it took 7 business days for me to realize that I had a water bucket in my inventory. Anyways, because of my almost destroyed gear and elytra, which would be very important for this challenge, I flew around in search of more loot to come across, and because of my best friend Chunk's base, it was pretty easy to find end cities and ships. So after returning back to the main island with 4 spare elytras, the next order of business was the resource gathering. In the end we were going to need pearls and obsidian for the teleportation glitch. In the nether we were going to need blaze rods and ghast tears for end crystals, and finally in the overworld, enchant books for our elytras. So after slaughtering a bunch of endermen and dismantling the Tower of Obsidian, I proceeded to return to the overworld and go through the nether portal for the nether supplies. I flew around sometime and located a fortress, where I went around and killed flying yellow mobs for its long stick, and a depressed balloon that was nearby for its tear. So now, with the nether and den complete, it was time for the dreaded breaking and placing of lectures until I get mending or unbreaking 3. But we needed to find a village first, so after building a portal and returning to the overworld, I flew around for not even 10 seconds until I found one. I then proceeded to break multiple laws, like robbing the villagers of their own wheat and selling it back to them, which is what I call maximum profit, and holding a villager hostage in a hole and force them to give me mending or unbreaking 3, which both took forever to get, but I eventually got them. I then put them on all my elytras, but mending won't mean anything if I don't have any durability in the first place. So I went off to a spider spawner that was nearby to mend the elytras. But you may be wondering, why do I need to do this? I thought you were gonna use the TP glitch to reach the world border. Yes, that is true, but I can't use the glitch for going back to the Ender Dragon from the border, as when I switch from version 1.21 to 1.13, the dragon disappears, and only reappears when I switch back onto 1.21. So once I have reached the world border using the glitch, I will have to switch back onto 1.21 and fly back normally using an elytra. Which also means that I would need stacks upon stacks of fireworks, or in other words I need to obtain around 5,000 fireworks. We definitely needed to find another way. There was no way I could obtain that amount, but then I remembered TNT launchers, the same ones duplicating TNT for the biggest explosion in mankind's history. And I have designed one that can boost me to thousands of blocks with just one explosion. The way this works is by duplicating the TNTs in an unloaded chunk, which would allow me to stack thousands of them, so when I'm ready, I can throw a pearl to unload that chunk and get blasted by the TNT for a massive boost. So this is how I will return back from the world border. But to achieve this, some materials were going to be required, like XP bottles, slime blocks and coral reefs. You may be wondering exactly how many XP bottles. Well, this is how many. But this is very possible, as in previous versions, there was a very well-known string duping exploit, and you could sell this string to a fisherman villager for pretty much unlimited emeralds, and you can avoid the villager restocking mechanic by just trading with a villager while it's in an unloaded chunk. So I would put my fisherman villager in a hole, then using a minecart we can travel to an unloaded chunk right next to the string duper, which will keep refilling my inventory with string as I sell it to the villager. And this was the quickest way to get nearly an inventory full of emeralds. The next step was to get a cleric villager, which sell XP bottles for 3 emeralds, which is way too much. So I put the villager in the fun chamber and turned him into a zombie, then saved him, to remind him that he wouldn't exist without me. So then, using the same exploit I used with the fisherman villager, I abused the glitch for all the XP bottles I'll need. So now with all the materials needed from 1.21, I switched back onto 1.21.4, and headed back to base. With all the preparations complete, it was time for the final boss, bringing the Ender Dragon to the overworld. I had tested this on other worlds before, and for some reason, the dragon will just straight up not freeze. So I had to do everything correctly or everything would get messed up. So after entering the end portal, the first step was to build up 200 blocks from 0, 0. Then build out 40 blocks in each direction and put an end stone on block 20 and 40. After all that, we should end up with something like this. Don't ask me how, but this structure, along with breaking the last end crystal and quickly flying to one of the end gateways, causes the dragon to follow me and go through the end gateway frozen. Now that the hard step was done, it was time to go on to the structure and wait for another dragon to spawn. After confusing Minecraft once again and having it spawn another dragon, I killed it. Then went through the gateway where the dragon was. And when I went through, the dragon unfroze and started to fly back to the island, but for some reason there were 2 dragons flying back. But it didn't really matter, as when we reached the end island, the second dragon disappeared. Anyways, I once again confused Minecraft and made the dragon freeze over the end portal. So now all was left was to use a couple of piston to push the Ender Dragon through, and this took so long, so please subscribe. Anyways, I went through the portal to be met with something that looks very illegal on the other side. With the Ender Dragon in the overworld, I headed back to base in order for the preparations of going to the world border. The plan on the roof would be to fly to around 3,000 blocks, then start using the TP glitch, as then I only have to do the glitch 4 times and maximize our speed. Along with that, I needed to bring all the materials for the TNT launcher and a chunk loader. You may be wondering, why do you need a chunk loader? Well, that's how I will get instantly teleported back to the world border after getting hit by the dragon. As by using an ender pearl stasis chamber connected to a pressure plate, that's also getting pushed down by a fishing rod, you can do pretty much anything you want and get teleported back with just a right click. So with the plan set, I went to the nether roof to start my journey. The first step was to fly to switch from version 1.21 to 1.13 for the TP glitch, and upon loading on, all my stuff was saved, so it was time to fly to around 3,000 blocks. After flying for a little bit, I reached 3000 blocks, so now I pulled out my TP glitch shulker box, and hoped for the best as I built the nether portal. All I had to do was jump and throw the ender pearl and my coordinates should multiply by 8. And my first attempt worked. And now I was at 7000 blocks, so all I had to do was do this 3 more times and I would be at the world border. The next 2 had worked flawlessly, so now it was the last one. With my final one working smoothly, I had reached 3.7 million blocks out, or the border in the nether, which was way too easy. So now all I had to do was log off from 1.13 and back onto 1.21. On 1.21 I loaded onto the world, 3.7 million blocks out, and went through the portal. I miscalculated a bit and didn't spawn right next to the border, but after flying around I found it. I had finally done it. I was standing next to the blue shining wall in all its glory, but we couldn't get distracted for long. I had to first build a chunk loader, which pretty much works by dispensing a minecart through a portal. The next step was to make the fishing rod ender pearl stasis chamber, and now that was done, I went back through the end portal to start the painstakingly long journey all the way back to the ender dragon. The machine I'm using to travel requires an unloaded chunk and TNT, so I built up the machine, set my render distance down to 2 and began to duplicate TNT. After about 30 minutes of loading everything was set up, so all I had to do was go one chunk over to unload my ender pearl into thousands of TNT, boosting me with the biggest explosion known to man. After about 30 minutes of flying, I was about 100,000 blocks away, and that may look like a lot, but doing the calculations, we would need to do this 36 times. So this next one had to go perfect, and luckily, it did. This next one had sent me to over 400,000 blocks, cutting my time of arrival by over 20%. But it wasn't over here, so I made yet another TNT duper cannon, and began the process again, but just one thing was different. I was gonna attempt to travel over 1 million blocks with a single explosion, so instead of duplicating TNT for 30 minutes, I was gonna do it for over 1 hour. Which would mean thousands of TNT boosting me, but if my PC crashes and this fails, the entire challenge would be for nothing. So with 12 hours of work on the line, I stepped forward one chunk, to get blasted by 20,000 TNT. And while in flying, please like and subscribe. The 1 million blast was a success, and now with just 1.2 million blocks to go, I built the next machine and waited. Machine after machine, I was slowly getting closer and closer. What seemed impossible was now slowly becoming my reality, so as I was grabbing a drink, I had done it. Over 3.7 million blocks traveled, 5 elytras destroyed, half a shulker box of XP bottles used, but it didn't matter, because I had done it. So with this insane milestone, I was so nearly there. I built a nether portal, which spawned me a bit away from spawn, so I traveled about 100 blocks toward dragon, and all that was left was to get hit by the dragon, right-click to get teleported back, and don't close your eyes, you definitely don't want to miss this. I had finally done it. Player left the confines of this world whilst fighting Ender Dragon.